I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is the Satanic Rites of Dracula. Now, the Satanic Rites of Dracula is actually the 8th film of the Hammer Dracula series. Now, in 1958, Hammer did their own adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula called The Horror of Dracula, and what happens is that movie spawned a bunch of sequels, and this movie is one of the sequels. This is actually the 8th film of the Hammer Dracula series. Now, originally I wasn't going to review this movie because all this week I'm reviewing movies based on the book Dracula by Bram Stoker, and I already reviewed The Horror of Dracula, and really during this week I only wanted to touch on the Hammer Dracula series once, but since this one is my personal favorite of the Hammer Dracula films, I decided to review this one as well. Now this is my personal favorite of the series, but a lot of people consider this to be one of the worst in the Hammer Dracula series, and in some ways I can definitely understand why some people would consider this to be the worst in the series, but I don't know, for some reason this is my personal favorite of the Hammer Dracula films. Now, basically this is actually a direct sequel to a film called Dracula A.D. 1972, which I have seen that movie, but I won't be reviewing that one because I don't want to talk about too many of the Hammer Dracula films, because I'm reviewing all different adaptations of Dracula this week, so so I don't want to waste too much time on the Hammer Dracula films. So the only Hammer Dracula films that I'll be reviewing are The Horror of Dracula, which I already reviewed, and this one. But yeah, this is a sequel to a film called Dracula A.D. 1972. Now, in that movie, what happens is Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee were in that movie, and in that movie Peter Cushing played a descendant of Abraham Van Helsing, and what happens is at the end of that movie, that descendant of Abraham Van Helsing managed to destroy Dracula at the end of that movie. So in this movie, this movie basically picks up where that movie left off. This is set 2 years after the events of that movie. Now, basically, what I find to be interesting about this movie is the plot of this movie is not what you think you would see in a Dracula movie. Like, the plot is actually kind of a mix between science fiction and actually kind of a spy thriller, which I think might be one of the reasons why many fans of the Hammer Dracula films consider this to be the worst in the series, but for some reason this is my favorite. I guess this is my favorite because this is actually a pretty political movie. Like, it does go a lot into politics and stuff, which I found to be pretty interesting, but basically the plot of this movie centers around this satanic cult, and it turns out that all the members of this satanic cult are actually politicians, and one of the members of this cult is actually a scientist, and what happens is these people are investigating into this cult, and what happens is they soon find out that this one scientist who is a member of this satanic cult has actually created a plague, and what happens is you eventually find out in the movie that Dracula is actually the leader of this satanic cult, and what happens is Dracula now wants to use this plague to wipe out the entire human race. So what happens is, like, these politicians who join the cult, obviously they didn't realize this, like, basically Dracula is promising each of these politicians, more power if, they join this cult and stuff, which is something I kind of liked about the movie, but, basically that's the plot of the movie. Like, it centers around, all these politicians who join this, like, group of devil worshippers who are led by Dracula, and it turns out that, Dracula now wants to, bring about Armageddon, and basically this group of people who were investigating into this cult, now they have to stop Dracula, and, of course, Peter Cushing in this movie plays, Van Helsing, but, like I said, the character of Van Helsing in this movie is actually a descendant of of Abraham Van Helsing. But yeah, I always found this one to be a pretty interesting movie. I mean, it is cheesy, and it does have, it has a weird kind of premise, but I always like this one myself. So yeah, that's my review on the Satanic Rites of Dracula. Now, this movie also goes by the title Dracula and His Vampire Brides, and this movie is in the public domain, so you can find this movie on a lot of these public domain box sets, but if you get one of those, like, public domain box sets and you see a movie that's called Dracula and His Vampire Brides, that is actually this movie, only under a different title. But yeah, the Satanic Rites of Dracula, personally I like it, but I can kind of see why some fans of the Hammer series wouldn't like this one. But yeah, that's my review on the Satanic Rites of Dracula, and bye.